Okay. Several students missed this problem on the last Friday, so I just wanted to make sure you understood it. The number of students in the course. When you're talking about how many students are in a classroom, is that quantitative or qualitative? Quantitative, because it's a number. I have 35 people in my classroom. And then the next person has 34. So it's a number. A number we can add in. Would it be continuous or discrete? Because we can count them. You're not going to have half of a person in your classroom. So instead of the number of students in the classroom would be, you would count. You would not have part of one. That's when everyone did okay. If our outcome is apple, orange, grape, peach, and mango, maybe they fruit. Quality. But I don't remember anyone missing that one. But any questions on continuous and discrete? Week 8. 5 more days till break. They're counting, aren't they? I am, because all 3 of my schools are on break at the same time, which is like a miracle. Okay, so week 8, we have the outline, and there's a co-rec outline in the regular class. And then if you did miss class and the video's not showing you the whole screen, it's all in here. These videos will help you. Homework, group assignment, and attendance. This section works with linear equations. You have a linear equation when it's growing by the same amount every time, and then the next section will show exponential growth. The linear equations grow by the same amount. When we get to exponential, they grow by a percent. So it's growing by more each time, or less. But a linear grows by the same amount each time. The formula for a linear equation is y equals mx plus b. Local equation have 2 points. Over x2 I don't remember if there's anything, I think most things were given the slope. But if we're given 2 points, find the slope, use this formula. Slope is overrun or change in y over change in x. And we will use this process when we're explaining the rate of change. The y-intercept is when x is 0. What extent, if we put 0 in for x, this drops out in y equals. So your y-intercept is when x is 0. Definitely formulas you want to memorize for your next. Okay, we know this is a linear equation because x and y are both to the first power. Slope is attached to the x. The y-intercept is the constant by itself. So the slope is 2.5. The y-intercept is 6. You could also write it as a point, 0, 6. Then you remember x is 0. Questions on that? And for the next 2, find the slope and the y-intercept. Y equals a negative 5x plus 20. What is the slope? Negative 5. It doesn't matter what order these terms are in. The slope is always the one with the x variable. So then the y-intercept is what? So the y-intercept is 20. The slope is a rate of change. So when you see miles per hour, cost per minute, those are the ones that would be the slope. How about this one? What's the slope? Notice I don't take the variable with it. I mean, I wouldn't take off if you did that, but you shouldn't take the variable with it.
So the variable could be either whatever, it doesn't have to be X, it doesn't have to be E.
Right.
It could be C, T, or X, or Z.
Yep. And usually they're variables you have a meaning. This one has something to do with, I think, electronics.
Okay.
But the price is 4 times the quantity that you buy minus 2.
Okay.
So a lot of times you'll use variables that have a meaning with it. And I will ask you to put it with those variables, but if you're more comfortable with X and Y, that's fine too. As long as I'm getting the right equation, I'm okay with it.
One more question. For y-intercept 6, but you wrote it 0, 6, is that because 0 is the X?
Yes. You could write it either way.
Okay.
In a math class where like algebra, calculus, you would want y-intercepts written as a point.
Okay.
No, the y-intercept is also called the zero of a function. That's when you write it as the number.
Okay.
So I'm so used to seeing it as a point, but both are fine. Okay, so we said the slope. What's the y-intercept? Like, say it again?
300.
But you want to be careful. You want to take the sign with it. So if it's negative, you need that negative. Because what it's saying is when, in this case, E, when E is 0, you're at a negative 300, whatever that is. Any questions on slope and y-intercept? Let's see. Q. I'm ready for some fresh strawberries, so we'll make it baskets of strawberries. And then P is we'll just leave it in dollars. I don't know how well the problem will make sense, but so when you're finding the slope, I'll do under here. I know it's hard to see once I get low, I think. So what's the slope? 4. Now, when you have a whole number, you can place it over 1 to make it a fraction, because remember, the slope is the change in y over the change in x. Our y is price. And our x is the quantity, which is number of baskets. So when you have to explain the slope in the words of the problem, it helps to set this up first. And I always set it up. Otherwise, it's so easy to make mistakes. But I put baskets down here because that's my x. My y is the price. So Each additional basket increases the price by $4. So X always goes up by 1. Each additional basket of strawberries increases, because the slope is positive, increases the price by $4. $4 a basket.
So what would be the given in that situation?
This,
All of that would be given?
yeah.
Mhm.
So you would be told that the quantity of baskets of strawberries could be sold at $4 each. We could also do it that way and not have the equation, which is some of the problems later. We'll see. But yeah, something like this would be given.
Like you always a variable, or did they ever give you a number there instead?
It should be a variable. Yeah. And a few other problems. Yeah. They don't necessarily have to give you. Any questions on, yes,
What is the -2 in that problem with strawberries then?
we'll go over that next. Is there any questions on the slope? So X always goes up by 1. So increase the number of baskets, each additional one. The price goes up by 4. And it goes up because this is positive. If this was negative, it would go down. The y-intercept is -2. Your y-intercept is when when X is 0. In this case, X is basket. So if no baskets are sold, you're in the hole $2. Probably would be a little higher than that, but maybe that's the cost of the basket. A lot of times the y-intercept is called the fixed cost or the starting amount. So it's probably the cost of the basket. Kind of weird. Sometimes the y-intercept doesn't always make sense. If this was the company, they'd be in the hole by $2. That's probably for the baskets that they bought. When I started up my tutoring company, I was in the hole because I had to buy so much paper, I had to buy so many pencils, certain math books that I needed. And then I had to make money. The number of hours I tutored, that would be my X. But when I didn't tutor anything to start with, I was in the hole, and that would be your y-intercept. Any questions? Yeah.
On the slope one again, why is it division? Wouldn't that be multiplied if that's?
In the problem, you're multiplying by X or Q. But here, when you're trying to explain the slope, slope is your change in Y over your change in X. So we're just looking at the slope. If you think about it, each time I increase this by 1, it's going to increase by 4 for the price. So if I put 1 in here, it's $4. If I put 2, it's 8. It's increasing by 4.
Why is it written 4/1?
I placed it over 1 so that I could see what it costs for each additional basket. And it'll always be a 1 unless you have a fraction, but most of them we don't.
So the change and why, the price. Baskets or driver. So that's why slope is the change and why over the change of it.
So this is not just a value, it's actually a rate. Price per quantity, and that's why we make it a fraction. That helps. Dollars per hour, so hours are in the bottom, dollars are in the top. Any questions on the strawberries? Okay, let's look at the one problem. I don't know, can you read it from there? Okay. An employee earns $9.25 per hour. Is it a slope or a y-intercept? The slope, because it's a rate, and because I already said that, I didn't read the whole problem. It's a slope. So if they earn $9.25 per hour, that's their slope. Probably there could be a fixed amount. You might earn $100 a week plus $9.25 for each hour that you work. But if it wasn't, you're making $9.25 per hour, and that's all you make. No commissions, no additional money. So your y-intercept would be 0. Because when you go in and start working for that week, you don't have any money to start with. You're just making your hourly wage. You can do W for it. Or you can use Y. Do we have a preference? What's your preference? X or Y, because you're used to it.
Right.
And that's fine. A lot of times I like to use a variable that has meaning because then I don't have to look back and remember, wait, which one was which.
Okay. But
But I think this is preferred. And since it is preferred, if that's what you prefer, label it. Like if I'm using W for wage and H for hours, I don't really have to label it because I know what it is. Whereas this one, you may forget, so make sure you label it. In this one, Y equals MX plus T. So it's linear because it's a rate. The slope is the rate. Our y-intercept is 0 because when we first go in, we don't have any money made that week until we start working. So if we were going to write the equation, it would be y equals 0.925x. If we wanted to explain the slope, put over 1, and then write what your values mean. Then y, so wage, dollar, So when you're asked to explain your slope, write the fraction so then you can think about it. Each additional hour worked, my wages go up by $9.25.
You said per is divide, right?
Yes,
So
per hour.
So if I was to just look at 9.25 per hour, I would 9.25/hour.
Yes. Yeah, so then you would already have the 1 hour here.
Right.
Now, sometimes the equation is just there, and so then they don't have that. So then you'd have to look back at what X and Y stand for. But if you're given the rate, then yes, that will work.
Okay. Rate is the slope.
So to explain it then in words, each additional hour worked so X always goes up by 1. Each additional hour worked, wages increase because it's positive. $1.25. I mean, if you think about that at your job, if you work hourly, each time you work another hour, you get that increase, whatever your hourly wage is. Any questions on that? To rent a car for 1 day, the cost is $25 plus 15 cents per mile. Set up a linear equation. Did you hear linear? And you want to think y equals mx plus b and find the slope and the y-intercept. So go ahead and plug into that. Okay, so we rent a car for 1 day. The cost is $25 plus 15 cents per mile. Set up a linear equation. What does Y stand for in the story? And what is X? So X is our miles. Per mile, that would be in the denominator. X is the number of miles. What is the slope? Say it again. It's the rate. 25 is a fixed cost. This is starting amount. Before you pull that car off of the lot, you've already had $25. It's 15 cents for each mile. So that means this is our slope and our y-intercept. Any questions on that? Okay. Go ahead and explain the slope. and the y-intercept. So on a test, you would definitely have to set up an equation, explain the slope, explain the y-intercept, and it's with an electric bill. Anyone want to say what the slope tells us? No, that's okay. Going up by 1, so each additional mile driven, the cost increases by 15 cents. You could have left it $0.15, but I wouldn't say 1/1500th of a dollar.
The y-intercept 25.
Yes. So think about how you would explain the y-intercept. I kind of said it already.
The fixed rate of $5.
If no miles are driven because your x is 0, so you want to take your x and it would be 0. So if no miles are driven, and that can happen because sometimes when you go to rent something, but then you don't take it, you still got to pay that fixed amount.
Wouldn't it be negative 25 if you have to pay the 25?
Since the function is cost, it's what you owe, it would be positive. If it was profit and you were in the hole, then it would be negative. So if this was the company, they probably would have that, you know, because they'll be making the money. Yeah. But there are a lot of times when you're talking about profit that you're in the hole to start with and it would be negative.
How would that be?
It would be negative in the equation. Profit. So if we have this equation where X is the number of DVDs sold, and this is profit, if no DVDs are sold, you're in the hole or you owe $500. It all depends on how the company wants it written. Some companies might want that a negative to show that. It all depends. Did that help though? them somehow that you're at a loss. So they don't usually say the profit is a negative 300, they usually say you're at a loss of. Any questions on that? The salesperson worked only on commission, earning 20% of the total amount sold. Write a linear equation. A little different than a rate. About what your X would be and what your Y would be. I think that 20% is the M or the B. Okay, sorry about that. Yes, because of means multiply times however much you sell. A lot of times salespeople make only a commission percent off of what they sell. Other times there's a fixed fee and then the percent. I used to work for a lawn care company and the salesman had a fixed fee. Maybe it's $500 a week, but then they got, I think they got 20% of the 20. Because I worked in the office and I got 10%. But they get 20% of the sales. But they had a fixed amount. This one's not showing a fixed amount. So this would be 0 because it says they only work on commission. So they're starting out the week with nothing until they make some sales. And Y is commission or income. Depending on the company, you may only work on commission. Sometimes you would have a startup amount that you make each week. In this case, it was only commission. So why people remember put it as a decimal. Any questions on that? When you're,
So that's why you would write it, because they, the zero. So, you know,
they're only making 20% of their sales, they're not making.
that's fine.
Right, and so then each week you put their sales into this equation and that tells you how much to pay them. And each person's sales will be different, so then you do need an equation like this. Program that will be put into your computer. The computers break down and sometimes you have to figure it out yourself. Had plenty of times at the end of a month that we had to send all our stuff in and we had no.
How would you write that? I equals.
That's how you.
Like as a statement, you would.
Oh, to explain the slope and,
Right.
okay. So our slope is 0.20. It is the amount we sell. Our income. Each additional dollar increases or income. Any questions on that? Let's solve some. If y equals 2.5x plus 6, and x equals 4, how can we find y? Plug the 4 in. And then calculate it. You do want to make sure you follow order of operations. You have to do the multiplication before the addition, or plug it all into your calculator and it will do order of operation for you. $16. Go ahead and try the next one. What are we getting for x? So we wanted y to be 0. Now you want to get the x by itself. So it depends on, I probably would add the 5x over, but you could have subtracted the 20. So I added this to the other side. If you subtracted the 20, that's fine. Then you divide by a -5, which is going to still make it positive. Any questions? And the next one's kind of, I probably would have worded it differently. I took it from your book. Giving you the variable, what number to plug in all at once. Says, if Jim's salary is $11.50 per hour and he works 5 hours, write a linear equation. So if he works $11.50 an hour for 5 hours, what is his rate? So X is your number of hours. He makes $11.50 an hour. And it doesn't say that he has any fixed amount that he gets, so this again would be zero. And in most cases, unless you're on commission, fee is almost always zero. And then plug the 5 in. I wanted to get the equation first, but yeah. This one really was just asking for this. I think it should have asked for the equation and then had you find 5 hours. Is there any questions on how you would do the equation? Then plugging it in, how much did he make? $57.50? Any questions on that? Now let's try this one. If my phone costs $25 and I pay a monthly charge of $50, write a linear equation. This is another one that's kind of worded weirdly. So just using the first sentence, write the equation. What's your slope? A monthly charge means $15 a month.
But that's the rate.
So sometimes weirding is odd. Another one I took from your book that I probably wouldn't word it that way. So we pay $15 per month plus that $25. What's the total cost for 10 months? We didn't write what our variable. What would X and Y stand for? Start with that. Y. What's Y? What's X? What is the total cost after 10 months? What they're giving you, what variable it stands for, and then you know which one to plug it in. And that's why either using variables that make sense or labeling them, find it easier. You don't have to go back and remember what did I use. And you know, if you print your paper, you can even put it as you're writing it. Monthly charge, class Y. So should we plug that 10 in for X or Y? Because the number of months is X. $75. So for 10 months, it would cost $175. Any questions? When does the total cost reach $250? When will the cost reach $250? Where should we plug it in at? I'm gonna write it up here, so it's all. Five by the 15. So the total cost will be $250 in 15 months. Any questions on that? Is there any questions on solving the equations, plugging them in? Any questions? Okay, so that's the COBRAC. There's two main problems from this one. An electric bill and federal taxes.
This isn't the homework, right?
No. But it will look like this. Yeah, this one's, it will look a lot like this. It will use, I'll just change these numbers. This should be, I don't know why this keeps shifting on me. I keep saving it and it keeps moving. It should look like that. So when you get electric bill, gas bill, water bill, they're pretty much the same. You have your name here, Penny Penguin, One University Plaza, and then you have a meter reading. The easiest way to think of your meter reading is to think of the miles on your car. At the end of every month, it doesn't reset, it stays there. But if you wanted to find out how many miles you drove, you could look at the beginning of the month and the end of the month and then subtract them and get your total. Same thing with meters for water, gas and electric. They keep going. Even after you sell the house, just like when you sell your car, those miles keep going. They don't start back at zero. And so in September, the meter reading was 67,100. And in October, it was 67,250. So if I subtract them, I know how many kilowatt hours were used. And that's what they do each time when they come out and look at your meter. They're checking the new, and then they'll find out, well, they usually use about this much. They'll do that for maybe 4 or 5 months or half a year. And then they come out and read it. And if you use more than they thought you would, you got to pay that. If you use less, once in a while that happens. In the summer for me for electric, and then or I don't have to pay anything for a couple months. They won't give me money back, but
No.
they'll put it.
Give you credit.
Yeah. So they'll say, oh, you don't have to pay anything this month. My brother just moved into a house and he's like, my water bill's $100 and some, what's yours? And I pulled it out and just happened to be zero that time because I was over, which really made me go crazy. But anyway, it is a continuous counting number. So to find it, we would subtract them. I guess I could put one. So if we subtract them, 150. So she used 150 kilowatt hours for the month. Any questions on that? Any questions on how I got it? So on your homework, looks exactly like this, different numbers. On your test, probably in class, this would be on an in-class one, I would think. Okay. Write the equation where C is the cost and K is the kilowatt hours. Do we want to use C and K or do we want to use X and Y? C and K? Okay. C is the same as your Y. And K is your X. Okay, so when we're writing our equation, remember y equals mx plus b? Here's all the b's. And if you go and look at your electric bill or your parents' electric bill, there's a lot more than this. I just picked a small amount of it. But some of them will be marked by kilowatt hours. And notice the first one is not. No matter how many kilowatt hours you use, there's a customer fee of $8.52. So that's your fixed cost. Because it's not multiplied times kilowatt hours. These are all per kilowatt hour, which makes these the slope. This one's not multiplied, so it is B, or your y-intercept.
So C and K will be C.
Yep. And we need the M and the B. But if you want to use, that is fine also. So we said the fixed cost was the 852, that would be our B. Our slope, all 4 of these, because they're all per kilowatt hour, so you want to add those together. 12, 15, 15, and 5. Did everyone see where the 67 came from? I just added, I don't know if it'll let me just highlight this column. No, the way I typed it. But I just added these. That would be our equation. Any questions on that? What is the slope from the equation? So 0.67. Go ahead and explain the slope in the words of the problem. Think of what our y stands for and what our x stands for.
Oh, there's the rate, so it's 26.7 per kilowatt.
Per kilowatt hour, yes. Just like we did before, x goes up by 1, cost goes up by 67 cents. So each additional kilowatt hour each additional kilowatt hour, the cost increases by 67 cents. Can everyone see that? Any questions? Okay, what's the y-intercept? It's b. It's the part by itself with no variable. Go ahead and explain it. Okay, explain what the y-intercept means. Anyone? The what? It is the fixed rate. How many? So if Penny went on vacation and shut everything down and used no electricity, she still has to pay the $8.52. Oh, there you go. So you want to make sure that you state your X, you're not using any of them, because that's when X is 0. So no kilowatt hours are used. Total cost for the monthly cost is $8.52. Any questions on that? If we want to find out how much she used per month, or for this month, we know the equation. We want to find out her total cost. What do we need? We need how many kilowatt hours she used. How many kilowatt hours did she use for the month? 150. So we plug the 150 in for K, the kilowatt hours, and that'll give us the cost. Getting $109.02. Any questions on that? The cost for the month is $89.59. How many kilowatt hours did she use? Exactly. And then that would go in, because it's a cost, it goes in for the cost. What are we getting? 121. First thing we did was subtract the $8.52 to get the 67K by itself. and then divide by the decimals. Because we want K by itself. K equals 121 kilowatts. So if you find out your bill, and a lot of times this equation's even on the bill, and say you can't afford $109, you can only afford 90, then you can plug it into that equation and see how much you're able to use to stay within your budget. So maybe you need to shut the lights off a little earlier, or no, buy a bunch of lanterns. If you live in Austintown, it's probably a good thing because my mom's electricity is always going out. Any questions on that? Okay. So you'll definitely see something. Well, there's one on the homework, there's one on the exam. Answer the questions below using this tax chart. Okay. Now this one is married filing separately. There's married filing joint, there's single, there's a lot of different ones out there depending on your income. I think there might even be one widow. For some reason I think I saw one, but I don't know if it's Ohio. Might be federal though. Anyways, when you're reading the tax form, what's nice about the tax forms now, you're in the 22% rate. It's not off of your whole amount. And that's where a lot of people are misinterpreting it. You only paid 22% on the part that went into it, so after the 38,701. The rest of it came from the ones below. Like my brother called me, bothers me a lot. But anyways, his wife got promotion and was making so much more money that filing together put him in another bracket. But filing together still was cheaper than filing separate. Because maybe only $1,000 went into that next one. So the rest of it's still at the lower amount. You only had to pay $1,000. I think it went into this bracket together. So the $1,000 that went over to 35%. The rest are in the other bracket, so it didn't do that. The other thing you have to be careful, which I didn't know the first time when I got married and did my taxes, if you file one joint, you have to file state joint also. I tried to do it separately because one was cheaper one way, one was cheaper the other way. You can't do it. So whatever you do with the one, you have to do with your state. Now, if we take this amount, so up to and including 9,525, you only pay 10%. So find 10% of 9,525. Are we getting $952.50? See, it already figured that. So if you go into this tax bracket, you only pay the amount over 9,525 in that tax. And it already filed the tax below. Just to have to figure out how much would be at 10%, which would be this amount, then add it. But now it has a continuous total for you. And TurboTax does the whole thing for you. But you can find an estimate of what you should have to pay. So it's doing that for you. So then all we need to do, find what tax bracket we fall into. And if it was this tax bracket, you pay $952.50, and then 12% of the amount that went over that. So let's see what this one was, 85,000. So if you made 85,000 for the year, which bracket are you in? 5,000, yeah, 24% bracket. So it puts you in the 24% bracket, but it's not 24% of the whole amount.
What's over,
So 24% of the amount over 82,500. So we know we're paying, if we look back at that one, it said 14,000. Plus 24% of the amount that went over. Did I get?
2,500.
Mm-hmm. Now, if you have the book for this course, I don't know about the newer version, but the older version, a couple of numbers were wrong over here. I think this was a 6. A couple were wrong, so be careful if you're using the one from the book. On a test, you don't have to memorize the text. And there's a bunch of different ones, so I probably put a different one on. Now, of course, this is before write-off, so. You're getting $14,689.50. So if you made 85,000, I don't know what year this was. Years ago. Each year it could change a little. If you made 85,000, you're paying $14,689 in taxes if you have no write-offs. And if you're married, filing together. Single, it would be more than that. They're at a higher rate. So there's less responsibilities. We'll try another one, but any questions? Yes.
Is there a reason behind the 10, 12, 22, or did they just like pull a number to that?
That's the percent they decided. So then the more money you make, you should pay more than somebody could. But then I think like they don't increase suddenly. There's 300,000, well, over 300,000, save at 37%, even if you're at 500,000, which they're trying to change that. And those rates change by year. It can change a little. But yeah, somebody decided that's the percent they should use. Probably someone who's not paying their taxes. Questions on that? We'll do another one. Let's. 105,000. So if your spouse and your income, because remember, this is two incomes together, because you're filing, you're filing separately. You're married, I thought it was the joint one. Maybe that one's on the project. I mean, group assignment. Okay, so 165,000. thing you wanna do is see what bracket you're in. You got the 32% bracket. Knocks us into that one. So we're paying $32,089.50 plus 32% of the amount over 157,500. So if we find the amount over by subtracting them, you get 7,500. $34,489.50. Is that what everyone got? Not too bad. Try one more. $35,000. $65,000, it put us in the 12% bracket. $4,009. Questions on that? I was just looking up what 2022, the average American makes 53,490. If the average American is filing separately from this, will they pay? What bracket does it put us in? $4,453. 57. Times the amount over 38,700. Getting $7,707. Any questions on that? Any questions on anything? Do you need to do another one, or you think you're good? Okay, try the homework before Wednesday. We will go over it on Wednesday. Is there any questions on anything that we did?